welcome to another Round the Rotary podcast with me, your host, JP Warren. And before we begin, I got to say that Round the Rotary podcast is brought to you by Capital Petroleum Consultants. CPC specialize in project engineering and well site supervision in all disciplines of the oil and gas industry. Contact us through www.capitalpetroleumconsultants.com to see what CPC can do for you today. Whether it's at 3 W's or 4, doesn't matter. I think everyone should know how to work the internet by now. So anyway, thanks for everyone for tuning in to Round the Rotary. We know you have your choice of podcasts out there, and we appreciate you tuning into this one. You can find Round the Rotary on whatever you're listening to right now. If you'd like, go leave a review and comments and let us know what you think. You can find us on Instagram at round_the_rotary_JP Warren to kind of just find out, get some more additional content. And I guess before we get kicked off, we just got kicked off right now. I know it's kind of come back from Tuesday, post Easter. Post. Did you have any Cadbury eggs or anything like that?
Did not. We don't do the chocolate.
You don't do the chocolate? Yeah, I don't think Evelyn does either. She just goes straight to the sour stuff. But I try to take all the Reese's Pieces peanut butter cups. I don't know if I know I need it.
We did a lot of eggs though.
You did?
Egg dyeing, yeah.
Oh, egg dyeing is pretty fun. I haven't done that in a while. Well, when I say a while, I'm 40 years old right now. I probably haven't done that since I was a kid, but still, I remember that being a good time. It just seems like a lot of mess to me right now as a dad. But anyway, everyone, I'm glad you're joining us today. This is Will Cauley, the Regional Service Delivery Technical Manager at Baker Hughes, and we were discussing that title before we did the podcast, and you said, it's kind of long. You just say Operations Engineer Manager for North American Land Completions and Well Intervention, and we shortened it to Operations Engineer Manager, NALCWI. Is that right?
You got it all.
Which one are we going with today? Which one are we going with? The last one? The second one? What?
Well, so the story behind these is our organization recently went through a transformation where they changed the word operations.
Time out. I never said what company. Baker Hughes. Okay, go on.
Yes, sorry. Baker Hughes. We changed the title of operations to service delivery. So ultimately, it was trying to fit both standardize across the globe,
okay,
but fit really what does operations mean? And it's really the teams that deliver the service.
Okay.
And so they changed the word operations to service delivery. So service delivery technical manager is essentially a engineering manager for the operations team.
It's a little rebranding. I like that though. I like that. I dig that. You gotta evolve and gotta adapt. So before you came on, your wife Kate Hyken came on, and she's number 2 most downloaded Around the Rotary podcast yet.
Got a lot to live up to.
Mike Tesseri is before her, but mind you, he came. He's the first one I ever did. So Kate came in and overpassed a lot of people. Came up, she's flying there. So what prep work did you do? Is this your first podcast?
This is my first.
This is?
Yes.
Are you a podcast guy?
I listen to some.
Okay.
Very selective, but
which ones do you do?
Obviously, Around the Rotary.
Obviously, Around the Rotary. Brought to you by CPC.
Motivational Intelligence is one that I've also listened to, and then there's just a couple other random ones.
Do you do any? Is it more professional or personal enjoyment?
It's more professional.
Okay, I find I
listen to music during my downtime, usually for personal.
I kind of like that. I feel like that's kind of old school. I feel like right now a lot of people are in this. I'm not even a podcast guy. You know what I mean? Of course I'll listen to several to support my friends and fellow podcast people out there. But a lot of people right now, I guess they feel like they have to come back. They're fill their time, their void time with all this productive stuff and productive podcasts, books on tape, professional this. But I'm the same way, man. I dig it. I listen to music too. Long road trips, music, or a true crime podcast.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's it, man. So what prep work did you get? Were you nervous? Are you nervous?
Not too bad. I mean, I get in front of a lot of people, presentations and that sort of thing. So I kind of liken this to that, right?
Okay.
Preparation for presentation or anything. So, but as far as at home, Kate gave me a few pieces of advice. She says that I tend to, as an engineer, I tend to provide a little too many details in my stories. So she said, "Hey, you might want to, tone it down a little bit."
Do we need a sign like a sign or a?
Yeah, just give me a signal whenever.
Yeah, I just downloaded. This is probably the most useless app that I can. Oh. Anyway, sorry, I was trying to bring in a little sound effects here, but it's not working. But anyway, so cut not too much detail, shorten it up, elevator talk.
Yeah. No, but honestly, we actually have a really neat scenario where she works for an operator. I work for a service company, and we're both in leadership roles in our organizations, and so we're able to go back and forth between, hey, I've tried this technique for motivation, or I've done this with my team. And various tidbits. Hey, here's a short video on leadership, right? That you can either look at for yourself or you can send to your team.
So kind of help each other out with that.
Yeah, so that wasn't necessarily just for the podcast, but just in general for our careers. It's cool to be able to bounce off some high level things within our organizations to say, hey, this has worked for me. Maybe you can try it, or if we have some challenges, that we can bring those up and discuss them.
Is that challenging? Because obviously, my wife doesn't work for an operator or anything like that. Is that tough to kind of, I guess, separate, like shut down the whole conversations when it comes to the professional side versus the personal side? Like, hey, we're talking a little bit too much about work right now. Let's switch it up a little bit. Is that a challenge?
It is, and we do, and that's why I said high level, right? So that there's just some overarching themes that we're able to talk to. But as far as getting into the details and the weeds, we kind of leave that at the office.
You've learned how to separate that,
exactly,
which is great. So you could just it's again, we're recording this on April 6th, 2021, and so the only advice was just do the elevator pitch and it's a conversation, right?
Yeah.
No warnings or anything like that. More excitement, more motivation.
Yeah. No. She said that you really do want to get your point across. Of is there anything that you want people to know about you, and how you are both professionally and as a person. And I think that really, through the things that we've talked about, the conversation, that'll come across.
Well, let's get this kicked off, man. I know we usually start with the background, but we're going to kind of change this up a little bit right now because you and your family just got back from Puerto Rico. Is that correct?
That's right.
And how long were y'all down there for?
5 nights.
So when you and I were talking about this a couple weeks back, I guess, prepping for the podcast, and then we had the big freeze and all this stuff, and we're finally, thank you for coming on, by the way. I'm glad we're sitting across the table doing this.
Thank you.
Finally.
Thank you for having me.
Finally.
Absolutely.
But you started talking about like how you travel and how your family travels isn't the how most people travel. You know what I mean? Like I'll go buy a ticket and get a hotel, did all that stuff. You do it in kind of a slightly different way that you've kind of I would say not a sommelier, not a guru, but you're kind of an expert at this. And what is this? Kind of shed some light into this.
Yeah. So back when I first was dating my wife, Kate, I was living in Denver. She was in Houston at the time.
Okay.
And I was actually working a schedule basically every other week in North Dakota. And a lot of travel, right? Houston, North Dakota, Denver, wherever. And so I started getting into travel bloggers and points and miles. And so how do you use those to your advantage with all the travel that you're doing? So the first thing that I would say is that you first sign up for a travel rewards program. So let's say United out of Houston, right?
Southwest,
whatever. So you sign up for those, or if it's a hotel, you can sign up for theirs, and they have different elite statuses that the more you use them, the more perks that you can get, right? And then so the second part of that is the credit cards, right? And so you can get even more perks and points through credit cards, and not all of them are specifically branded to the United or the Southwest. Some of them are kind of a overarching umbrella, like a Chase United, Chase Ultimate Rewards, or Citi Thank You, or Capital One. They have their own miles, and they all have transfer partners, right? And so you can collect these miles, and then you can transfer them to whoever you want.
Right. Okay.
And so as a beginner, if you were a beginner, I would say probably Chase Ultimate Rewards is the best. So get a credit card that collects those. And then the credit cards, once you get them, they have like introductory point value. So if you spend so much within the first couple months, then they give you just a bunch of points. Like
so you start accumulating
50,000, 1,000, 100,000. And that right there will get you like a round trip ticket.
Okay.
On the airline. So during this time, started accumulating all these points and doing that so that we could, go to kind of some adventurous places on vacations and travel in a way that we wouldn't normally otherwise, And so on this most recent one, we were able to do the 5 nights at the hotel was all paid for on points. So
really,
yeah.
So the kind of so you started diving in on this just because you're living separately, you're traveling a lot and all that stuff. So it was kind of your downtime. You're like, hey, I'm gonna fiddle around with this and kind of. I know they're offering points here and miles here and this here. So you're just kind of one of those things. You kind of piecemealed it together as an engineer.
Yeah, and I mean it can get way more complicated and in depth than what I ever did. Spreadsheets galore, and I.
So you have spreadsheets?
No, I didn't go that far.
Okay.
I didn't go that far, but I mean, some of the points that you get, you want to maximize your rewards, right? And so in order to do that, you have to know, all right, if I'm going to a grocery store, I got to use this credit card. If I'm going to a gas station, I got to use this credit card.
So how do you figure this out? Do you follow people that do this all the time, or how do you I guess dive into this?
Yeah, so my number one resource was probably the points guy.
Okay.
And so he's a travel blogger, and he's been really big. And I know travel is different now, right, with COVID.
Oh yeah.
And so. That's actually a good thing and a bad thing when it comes to these points. It's like now we're starting to see some relaxation and restrictions. So now travel's picking up. Or if you still don't want to travel, it's a good time to start accumulating points so that when we can travel again, that you can.
You got some in the bank.
You got something in the bank.
Right. Okay. So so all you had to pay for was pretty much flights.
Yeah, on this most recent trip.
Yeah. So how was it? Was it a good time?
And even then, we could have technically used points for that too, but.
You got to save some of those for the next trip.
Well, you want to maximize the value of those, and so sometimes it doesn't make sense to actually use the points. Sometimes it makes more sense based on the pricing and how you value those points to actually pay for the ticket outright.
So how was it traveling? I guess not post. I mean, we're in the middle of it, but I guess was this your first trip? I guess internationally since March of 2020.
Yeah. So, one thing is we wanted to pick a destination that felt international,
right,
but wasn't.
Right.
So Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. Right. So really the only preparation we had to do was we had to get a COVID test within 72 hours of leaving. But we weren't subject to, the current rules of
2 weeks
coming no quarantine,
right,
or coming back into the U.S. From a foreign country, you have to get a COVID test before as well.
Right.
But since we were still part of a U.S. territory, we didn't have to do that coming back in.
So how was the experience down there? I mean, was the service there? Was it did it feel like it was pre-COVID, or did you was it kind of a reduced number of people there?
No, so it was during spring break, which when we planned it, we didn't realize. So It was packed. So the airport in San Juan was, it felt like, a lot of us have been to Cancun.
Right.
So It felt like just the Cancun airport, right?
When did you realize it was spring break? Once you landed, you're like, oh shit, what have we done? What have we done?
Well, actually the week before we knew it. And we were like, oh man, spring break, and
gotta commit.
You've got 2 weeks here in Houston, and then you had the Easter week, so we knew that across the country and everywhere there was going to be a lot of vacations.
So there were a lot of people. So the airport was buzzing.
They still did have mask mandates, and but the services, like you mentioned at the hotel, were a little pared back. But overall, it seemed like it was normal.
You even kind of see that in the States, though. I mean, whether you're traveling to Austin or to Lake Charles, I mean, it seems like the hotels, I mean, they're there. I mean, they want you there at the same prices, but at the same time as the services have kind of dropped. And as we were talking before, we're not high maintenance guys. You know what I mean? Our families aren't either. You know what I mean? Which is a blessing, but it's like you kind of notice, like, hey, this faucet's leaking here. That obviously has been doing that for a while, or the towels, something like that. So it kind of has dropped down, but I don't blame it. I mean, the hospitality industry has gotten demolished over the past year. So
it was good to see that it's coming back.
Yeah.
Right? And you'll see, I think, soon more and more of these little, things that you maybe took for granted previously.
Yeah.
And then now realize, hey, they're not doing this or that.
And it's the minor stuff too that you don't even think about when you're traveling too. So hey, why don't you get this kicked off? You got a unique background, because someone, I guess, in our age, this day and age, especially, I mean, you don't see a lot of people with a lot of tenure, a lot of time at companies. I mean, back, I think, in our parents' days, they would stay there, from once they graduated college until they retired. And that's what they did. Now you see people jump around every, 2 years, 7 years, something like that. You have been at Baker Hughes for 18 years and 4 months. So why don't you give us the tips? Obviously, you've had so many. I'm looking at your LinkedIn right now. You've had so many different roles, and it seems like different, whether it's local, whether it's international. Why don't you just get us kicked off and kind of how you got in the oil field, where you grew up, and all that. Give us a spiel.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was originally born in Maryland, right outside of D.C.
Okay.
And lived there until I was 10. and we moved to central Louisiana as a family. And I spent the rest of my time going through high school in Alexandria, Louisiana.
Well, what brought your family from Maryland to Louisiana?
So my parents are ministers.
Okay.
So they Baptist music ministers. So my mom, so every Sunday my mom played the organ at church. My dad directs the choir. They're both ordained ministers, and they would write, compose, arrange music. All the other children's choirs, handbell choirs, this and that. They basically ran all the...
So musicians.
Yeah, musicians.
Okay. Did you have any of that talent? Do you pick up the guitar and strum it every now and then, or what?
I'm pretty regretful on not taking up some of the musical instruments that they played, and they I did take piano lessons as a kid, and did strum a guitar, and I know a couple chords.
But nothing you picked up.
I was musical. I did band all the way through high school, but I kind of quit it after high school.
Okay, all right. So you're down here. Parents are musical ministry.
Yeah, so they changed churches.
Okay,
and that was what brought the move to there was a church in need in Alexandria that needed both of their roles, and so we moved. So it was a little bit of a culture shock, even at age 10. So I went from, field trips in elementary school. We were going to the Smithsonian, Smithsonian and national monuments, and in Louisiana we were going to swamp tours, and
it's different. It is. It's like a different country.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
But honestly, I wouldn't have it any. It was tough at the time, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Right? We love Louisiana. That's home now.
Yeah.
I say I'm from Louisiana now. So
I still say I'm from Connecticut. Why? Because I moved there when I was 8. I left there after high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, all right. So you grew up there and you went to LSU.
Yeah, went to LSU, studied mechanical engineering.
Okay.
I wanted to do pre-med. Going into college, and I had a roommate that was a year ahead of me, and taking some of those classes, decided, hey, that wasn't for me. So kind of randomly sat down with my parents and looked at the catalog. Back then, it was actually a paper catalog.
Yeah. It wasn't online.
The major descriptions, hey, here are your courses and everything, and settled on mechanical engineering. And most of my family is they're either in the minister business or academia.
Okay.
Right? So nobody's in kind of corporate America. And
what did you want to do with that mechanical engineer?
I still didn't know at the time.
Okay.
Right. I just felt like it was versatile.
Yeah.
So whether it was automobile industry or any type of industrial type business, and so my first real introduction to the oil and gas industry was a co-op with Weatherford.
Okay.
And that was down in Houma, Louisiana. With some of their cementing equipment, float equipment, and I was basically a lab technician. I would test some of the.
So what was your feeling? I guess going from academia, ministry, and all that stuff, and suddenly now you're plunged into, what did you say, Monroe, Louisiana?
Houma,
Louisiana. Louisiana.
South Louisiana.
So that is South Louisiana. So what was, I guess, your feeling like? Okay, this is the only gas industry. I'm here. I'm not. So first generation, I'm guessing.
First generation. Yeah.
All right. So you're there. You're exposed to this now. So what was, I guess, your initial reaction from this?
It was really excitement, right? Because it was new.
Yeah.
And it was, even as an intern, the wages were decent. They were good, right? So I was excited about that and understanding really what as a career what potential there was in the industry.
Right.
I also being a lab technician, I was able to just blow up things, right? And so that was kind of cool too.
Yeah. What person doesn't want to do
probably that? A little. HSC's come a long way since then. So
back in the old days, back in the old days when you start off. So you start off as an intern with Weatherford, and then kind of carry us through on, I guess, how you kind of, took the plunge into the oil and gas industry, and how you stayed at give us your various roles over at Baker Hughes. So walk us through that.
So right out of school, started with Baker Hughes in Belle Chase, Louisiana, just outside of New Orleans, and was an offshore field engineer.
Okay.
And so in the engineering program, they basically assign you to, we call it a product line. So you kind of start specializing in one specific product line. And so mine was liner hanger systems, liner top packers. It was open hole completions is what we called it at the time. And so you start, learning how to redress tools and how they work in the shop, and then you start going offshore and learning how to actually run them and install them. And so, that was exciting there too, right? Going, getting on your first helicopter, right?
It is. You get your best sleep out there too, if you can sleep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were out there for let's say 5 days at a time, and
you're up nonstop.
The majority of the time, it's like short naps for 3 days,
right?
3 of those days, but once the job was done, then you could sleep, and that was. You hope you didn't miss your helicopter.
But I know that was the worst. I remember every day before you fly back in from offshore, it's either misty or it's cloudy, and the chopper can't get out there or something like that. It's always that last day,
waiting on weather.
Waiting on weather nonstop, and that 11 o'clock comes around, you're like, the birds can't. It's like, damn it, another day out here.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty fun experience though, going offshore for you.
No, absolutely, and you learn a lot. There's a lot you take for granted as you look back on your career, with the offshore sector and how much process and procedure and planning preparation goes into, each job, each well. And I think that helps, as the industry has changed and North America has, boomed in the last 10 years. I think that has helped drive some of that. So this engineering program was about 3 years.
Yep.
I stayed and we actually moved our district from Belle-Chasse to Houma. So I stayed there for 3 years, and then I moved to Houston the first time. So this was more of a regional engineering support role.
Okay.
So doing basically the same thing, but on a more advanced technical level. Pre-job planning, project management, working with sales, supporting sales. And
so now you kind of have more of a broader view of the overall the procedure, the system from, I guess, concept to, I guess, deliver.
Correct. And so you're seeing more of the manufacturing side of things. You're seeing more of the sales side of things. Really, that whole quote to cash process. And also, this was the way we were structured then was there was still some land that was starting to kick off. So I remember, multilaterals for the Barnett Shale, which was before, really the beginning of the shale boom. We were supporting some customers that were starting to run these multilaterals and that sort of thing. So that was my first really foray into North America land.
All right. So you moved to Houston.
Yeah.
And then kind of carry us through.
Yeah. So after that role, I went actually into sales. And really enjoyed that role.
Did you really?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So tell me about that.
So I think out of any role that you are in our industry, it's probably the most instant gratification role there is, right?
Okay.
If you go and win a sale.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So easily measured, instant gratification, and that's kind of the world we live in these days. So
I don't know if I don't know that feeling anymore these days. I'm glad you experienced that.
So I specifically was in-house for the most part in BP, and this was actually during the time, this was back for offshore, and this was during the time of Macondo. And so we, the unfortunate event, absolutely, people lost their lives and damage to the environment, but we were fortunate enough to be able to help with the intersect wells and the relief wells, and so that's really what was the beginning of my success with that BP account.
I mean, during that time, that was such a surreal, tragic incident moment also. But I would imagine being on the forefront of that, I guess the actually day-to-day activities to, I guess, mitigate what was going on out there. I mean, tell me about that for you, if you can.
Yeah. So, I mean, if anybody remembers, there was, news vans just parked out front all the time, broadcasting live, like all day nonstop. And, all the operations floor was, it was tight hole, it was secured and everything. And there were a lot of visits from the government, right? Government agencies, the Secretary of the Interior and the whole delegation from there. And, I remember going in the building like any normal day and trying to get on an elevator, and then, people in suits with talking into their sleeves and earpieces saying, "Hey, you can't get on this elevator, get out,"
Yes, sir.
And
I'll take the stairs.
I'll take the stairs. Wait on the next one. But being in the morning meetings for some of these intersect wells, just a pressure cooker, right? They were intense. They were the most focused and determined I've ever seen any operation.
Well, the entire world's eyes was on y'all at that point.
Absolutely. So, it was so critical at the time to make sure that everything was executed flawlessly, and I think for the most part, there's a lot of things that may not have been handled so great, but I think for the most part, the intersect wells, we were able to complete pretty quickly.
So how'd you handle that? I guess that pressure from all that.
Well,
Is that just keep your head down, get the job done, or is it? I mean, did you have to kind of take some personal space or activities, hobbies, or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest thing was that you could potentially be put on the spot, in those meetings, right? And saying, if you weren't delivering fast enough, or the service execution was not 100%. So,
right.
So if anybody's had those conversations on a normal well,
magnify that by 1,000.
Yeah, when so many other people are looking at you and there's so much else at stake. So, I think that the pressure for me was mostly to get across, as a salesperson, to get across, the capabilities, and just make sure that was communicated effectively, and then to make sure that we could deliver, with on time and that sort of thing. So, I think there was probably more pressure on the execution team the operations team than there was from a sales perspective.
Right, but still, everyone at that table kind of had an important role.
Absolutely,
I would imagine. So you're in sales at BP, Macondo, and then
yeah. So things opened back up in the Gulf after the moratorium, and there was really just a whole new host of regulation that we had to accommodate. And for a service company, it meant traceability of things that we really hadn't been tracking prior to that. And in a whole host of processes and procedures, from that whole quote to cash process we mentioned. And so I took a role actually going back to Houma to lead our operations district.
So after Houston, you moved back to Houma?
Moved back to Houma to lead the district. And so this was my first manager experience, and with all these new regulations.
So did you try to actually pursue this, and actually did you try to pursue this managerial role, or was this something like, hey, Will, we have a space for you that we need you to fill? I mean, was this kind of, how did this, I guess, get brought to you?
Yeah, so it was we want you to take this role.
Okay.
And it actually, it was excellent developmentally. There wasn't, but I was happy doing what I was doing in Houston as well. But I think there were some personal things that wanted to bring me a little bit closer back to Louisiana.
Okay.
And so it made perfect sense.
Were you ready for this managerial role?
So,
looking back.
So, being an offshore district and how intense and how expensive each well is, $100 million wells, and more, you would think this is a pretty big responsibility. And as far as liner hanger systems go, at the time that was kind of our flagship global district. It was like $75 million a year in revenues,
right?
And so you question yourself, am I ready for this? But looking back, the best thing about that was because there was so much process-oriented procedures and quality plans and that sort of thing, that it was a well-oiled machine.
Okay.
Right. So it was a good introduction to being a manager. Now, the challenge for me was these were the guys that trained me.
Oh, so suddenly you're coming in as a different level, different position. Now you kind of have to supervise the people that
correct.
That's a weird feeling. So how did you deal with those relationships?
So, the team is great. The team was great,
right?
But a little reluctant to change and stuck in their ways. And when they're the ones that have showed you the ropes, it's challenging to really convince them to make a change. And so you really have to go into, why are we making the change? And that's really motivating any team and getting them to accept changes. Why are we doing this? What is the end game? It may seem like it's making your job more difficult, but the end game is to ultimately make this process bigger than what your role is, more efficient, or whatever it is. So getting them to understand why we would make certain changes was the biggest challenge I saw.
But that also sounds like it could have been the biggest success if you find a way to effectively communicate why we're doing this. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was that's huge in any role. And so that was really my first practice at effectively communicating, change management, and that sort of thing.
So a lot of people that get those new managerial roles, they think, okay, well, I have to filter what I communicate to my team, or I have to take this and spill it to my team however I see fit. But I mean, you hear about a lot of successful managers or people that sit in those roles that when it does come to communication, I find the ones that kind of that I've heard stories or spoken to or sat across the table to that shine are the ones that are very transparent with their teams.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was very transparent, and they knew me so well that, I let them operate for the most part autonomously. Yep. And I was focused on, how do I learn how to run a P&L? How do I learn how to run a business? Because that was what I hadn't done.
Which is a great experience, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's the business side of things.
Yeah, and that's that was my ultimate goal was I wanted to get that P&L experience for taking that role and going there, and I think that's critical really for anybody in our industry is understanding the financial aspect of it and the profitability and the cash flow and costs and that sort of thing.
That's why you see so many reservoir engineers going up to CEO level because they understand the financial side of the business.
Absolutely.
Which is what you need to speak to.
Return on investment.
That's right. So how long did you do this for and before you went to your next role?
So I did that for 2 years, and then I went into the Denver role. So Denver,
Houma, Houston, Houma, Denver. Okay.
Correct.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So I went to Denver to lead our Williston Basin area. So this was Williston, Dickinson, and we had a small satellite shop in Glendive, Montana.
Okay, I'm with you.
So this was about end of 2013.
December 2013 to about May 2016?
You still got the LinkedIn up?
I'm just guessing right now. I can read you right now. I'm good with guests. I can read you.
You're good at dates. Yeah, so this was, I would say, post the Wild West days, or it's coming to the end of the Wild West days in Williston, and then really where the infrastructure started improving, and then of course into 2016, which was the most a downturn there. Yeah,
I remember that downturn, and then you actually went to so you're in Denver doing the area operations manager.
Yep.
Role.
Yeah. So this is similar to the previous role, but it's instead of being over one district, it was over an area.
So you work
with 7 districts.
So you're not working the same group. So you went from that one group. So you actually there's another promotion, another layer of now you have more than this home district. You have 7 other districts like that.
Correct. So in this role, I was based in Denver. I wasn't at any of the districts. Okay. I had district managers at each one, and so it was even more strategic financial P&L type of role where I would spend half of my time in Denver with our leadership for the region and our customer base for the most part in Denver, and then the other half of the time was up in North Dakota.
So how was that? I guess going from one district to 7. I mean, how was that learning curve for you? Was it kind of the same thing on a bigger scale, or did you have to learn new tools during this transition?
So there were some new tools to learn, but it wasn't that difficult because you're not really in the technical at that point. You're more in the business operations. But it was understanding customer base is different. The contractual models, the quoting process, right. That's all different, right? Long-term project managed contracts
offshore.
In offshore. Here it's one day
well to well.
That
is interesting. I remember going from offshore. You're looking at those the riser inspection, all that stuff's like $3 million, $5 million. Then I went to land drill pipe, and it was like 11 cents per foot or whatever it was. I'm like, that's nothing. Just give it. That's nothing. But the scope is different. I mean, it is different, but it is kind of take away all the scope of it is the same thing.
Yeah, and there's really a whole other skill of understanding the customer needs and being able to meet those expectations in North American land, versus offshore as well.
Right. So you're doing this in Denver. Are you enjoying Denver?
Oh yeah, I love Denver.
Okay.
All right. I love Denver.
Okay.
But as I mentioned earlier, my girlfriend at the time, wife now, she was based in Houston, and the wedding was coming up, and there was a conversation where she mentioned that it might be good if we live in the same state when we get married.
Kind of makes sense. I mean, if you're planning a wedding, it makes sense to kind of be around each other. You want to make sure you can live near each other versus 2 states away and kind of figure it out that way. So obviously you got to get back to Houston. And was that a conversation you had with your supervisors?
Yeah, absolutely. And thankful for them. This was done 2016 downturn.
Yep.
There wasn't a lot of flexibility in roles. I mean, everybody was kind of like,
This is what you get.
This is what you get. And so very fortunate to be able to transfer back to Houston in a role that, I'm not scared to say it wasn't necessarily the best fit for me. It was out of my comfort zone. So if there was any role that I took on in my career that challenged me the most without any technical knowledge or operational knowledge, it was this role, and it was a global inventory manager role.
Okay.
So now I'm in inventory, materials, supply chain.
And you were never in that before. I mean, you kind of managed it a little bit, but that wasn't kind of your what you focused on previously.
Right. Most of the time I was, talking with these guys and asking them, hey, where's our equipment?
Yeah. Stuff that.
Now I'm that person now. But so in 2016, so we during this downturn as an inventory manager, we had this impairment globally. So it was kind of it's a finance term where you come and you basically write off a bunch of whatever it is, whether it's facilities, assets, whatever.
Okay.
And so I was in charge of really compiling from a global standpoint this excess inventory that we were going to ultimately impair.
That seems like such a huge project.
It was like over $100 million.
So so you're stepping into this role. You this is the first global role you're taking, so I'm assuming that included some traveling.
Yeah, well, because of the downturn, there was some restrictions on excess cost and travel costs. So it was a lot of late nights meeting with Asia Pacific and
you got to acclimate to their time, their schedules, and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, and it was the deadlines were based on specific quarterly earnings deadlines.
Okay.
And so there would be obscure instructions on gathering this piece of information or that information, and you have to be able to understand quickly what is this output. There wasn't a lot of instruction, and so that there was times where we'd have to redo it, and it would make the deadline even
right. Right, it's like pressure cooker.
It was.
Okay.
It was. So,
all right.
So and like I mentioned, there were people in the organization. This was, I don't want to say it was a placeholder, but it was, it was a way for me to get back to Houston, but it was also a way for me to expand some experience that was needed in a short time. So this role lasted only 6 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I got into the global product line manager role for the liner hanger systems that I talked about, and so. This was a role that definitely fit my skill set much better. Because
you've had the background on this, you kind of know how to kind of manage the multiple businesses, and now it's on a global level.
Yeah,
that's pretty exciting, though.
Yeah, no, it was. It was. I was really excited to get it, and especially with enjoying travel and that sort of thing. The industry was picking up, and was able to go to it. Be based in Houston, but still be in a global role in travel. I've been to some incredible places, and even the ones that are less desirable, it's really neat to just see cultures and to see how the business operates there and how the customer base is there, and really try to understand
and the contrast of cultures too. I mean, the contrast cultures, and also kind of to me, you travel and all that stuff. It kind of brings you to a certain level, humility, being humble. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Thankful for what we have here in the States. And then it also expands your skill set in the sense of you have to understand how to. It all comes back to communication, but what motivates people from other cultures, and how do they work, and whether it's hierarchical or how to respect their culture and that sort of thing. And so there's a lot of nuances that you have to consider when you're trying to do business internationally.
I mean, some countries are very like business up front, no personal stuff. Other cultures, like you gotta talk to, you have to have those relationships for months on end before you even discuss business. So it really is kind of a learning what each culture, how they conduct their business in, and that's fun though. I think.
It's fascinating to me. Yeah, it really is.
I mean, the way things you're used to doing business in Houma, Louisiana, or Denver, or Houston is not the way it's done in whether it's Nigeria or whether it's wherever part of the country you've Russia or wherever.
Middle East.
Exactly. Exactly. Very different. Very different. But you got to adapt to all that stuff, which is exciting.
Yeah, it really is.
I think.
And the other thing is too is like you take the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, right, and huge market there globally, and but it's one customer.
Yeah. Yep.
So there's some challenges associated with that, and learning how that relationship works.
To me, it's also communicating. I mean, it's also being a liaison between, for example, KSA and the states. I mean, I remember when I was over there, my employer was saying, "Hey, you need to sell XYZ. You need to sell XYZ." But it's like, man, that's not how it is. I mean, that's not how business is done here. Like you don't tell the engineer kind of what they need to be drilling with. And not only that, you really can't expand your market share because how they do, this is how they did. You have, let's say there's whatever, you have a third, you have a third, and you have a third. So you really can't like grow and expand it if your service is better than the other. I don't know. That's kind of my experience over there. But you have to kind of be a liaison to communicate to your supervisors back here, or wherever you're stationed. Like this is just because you want something how it's done in the States. That doesn't mean how it's done over in KSA or anywhere else. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you got to communicate that. So you actually switched to a different role, I guess, right before COVID hit in 2020.
Yeah, so that's the role that I'm currently in.
Okay.
So I came back to North America Land, and that's where I came into this engineering manager position. So operations engineer. So the engineering program that I started with, and then the let's say the region engineer when I first moved to Houston. These engineers are all, I lead that group now.
Okay.
So for all of North America Land. And it's not just liner hangers now, it's completions and wellbore intervention. So it's our whole completion portfolio.
So which, I guess, out of all your, it seems like you've had 17 or 18 different or 12 different titles over at Baker Hughes. Which has been the role that you've, I guess, enjoyed the most, brought the most personal satisfaction to, and why?
Yeah, I knew this question was coming.
You did?
So when you look back and you see, all the different roles, there's certain things that you want to get out of each role. And so I mentioned, sales was awesome in my opinion because it was the instant gratification piece. So I think that it's hard to choose one specific role that you like the most, but I think that each one you take tidbits from. So when I was, area manager in Denver, that was the one where I learned the most about a business, right? And running a business. And so there's skills that I learned there. Motivating people. I think that all of the roles that, you can take from that on how to motivate people. And again, we talked about the cultures and how you change your approach and how to motivate people and work with people there. The inventory role, I didn't mention this earlier, but it was my first individual contributor role in a while, right? So I had been a manager in both roles, and then this was really an individual contributor. So you had to learn how to use your network and influence to. So more of your support role,
more of the softer skills.
Yeah. So to be able to get your tasks complete and get people on board and that sort of thing. So you learn those skills there, and then. I think the biggest one in the current role is mentoring and training engineers for their careers coming up.
So how do you, I guess, identify someone to mentor? I mean, obviously you can't have the same attention or effort on everyone. I mean, I guess how do you identify and what do you mentor? Is it time management? Is it kind of career path? What is it?
I think it depends on each person, right? There's certain things that you think that people need to focus on, but I've always found that a mentor-mentee relationship is best when it's informal, and not like assigned.
Where you have a sheet in front of you. It's like, okay,
let's build this out. All right, now we're gonna meet so often.
Yeah,
and so I actually had a mentor assigned to me at one point. Was cross divisions within the company. This is way back.
Right.
And, we ended up only meeting like 2 times and then just fizzled out because there's so much change in the organization, and just
it's got to be applicable too. It's got to be real world stuff too, versus twice a year tagging up and having no relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the mentors that I feel like have had the biggest impact on my career have all been informal and people just along the way that whether and most of them I actually haven't reported to in their structure, right? They're kind of along the side.
Somebody you kind of look up to, and I can learn something from this person.
Maybe we worked side by side at one point, and then the careers have gone just different places. So,
So you got over this role in February 2020. The world stopped March 2020. I guess during this time, from when you started this to now, I guess what have kind of been some challenges that you've seen? I guess during this this COVID time in your new role, because you got dumped there a month before everything stopped. So how was that for you?
Yeah, I mean the biggest thing has been I haven't been able to go out to all the locations from a travel standpoint,
right?
And based on our company regulations and with respect to the virus. But so I haven't been able to develop those relationships in person with our engineers on the ground.
So are you doing that virtually though?
Yeah, no, we've got teams, and we even try to do happy hours or whatever with any of the video.
Yeah, it still is very difficult to make that genuine, authentic connection though over Zoom or Teams or anything like that, isn't it?
It really is, and so for me my motivational style is it's got to start with like affinity, and in order to develop that affinity or that commonality, something that you can both relate to. I really need to have that one-on-one. I feel like I need to have that one-on-one conversation to be able to find what that commonality is and that affinity, and then that develops trust in the relationship, and then trust can then turn into motivation.
Okay. So you need to have that, but it's challenging though. So I guess you see through Zoom and Teams, happy hour, or whatever. It's kind of the only thing you can do right now. If you can't get out to a location or shake these people's hands or meet them face to face.
Yeah, it's been a challenge, and hopefully the restrictions will start easing up.
I think they will. I think they will with all the vaccines and all that stuff and the air travel going. I think it will. I think things are kind of going not to the new normal, the old normal, but it's definitely lightening up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our our current, I guess, deadline is June 1st, where we think we're going to lift some of our restrictions.
Okay. I mean, again, that's probably a moving target. I mean,
they've pushed it out.
It was June 1st, 2020. Here we are a year later.
That's true.
That's for everyone, though. So I guess let's get on. What else do you want to talk about? I guess look in hindsight, I guess what would you kind of what do you wish you knew more before you took on a role? I mean, and also that role that you took, the inventory role. Let's get back to that. I mean, you said you were kind of thrust in there, kind of out of your comfort zone and all that stuff. I mean, looking back on that, I mean, would you do that again, or is it kind of would you steer clear away from kind of jumping into something you're not comfortable with?
No, I absolutely would recommend doing it, because I think that it gives you a different perspective on how to approach things and really strategically be in the moment, right? You have to actively think about how am I going to complete my goals, whereas in some of these other roles where you become a master at it or you're comfortable with it, you just do it automatically, right? Subconsciously or whatever. So I think that it definitely does help develop some of those skills with actively being strategic, which as you move through your career you need to be obviously develop, and then also, as I mentioned, that you can never stress how important your network is, both internally and externally of your organization.
That's what we're always talking about here. Just expand your network, even if it's a customer, a salesperson, a person in HR, whoever it is. Talk to people, get to know people, whether they can do anything for you today or whatever. Just expand your network.
Yeah.
Meet someone for a cup of coffee. Just introduce yourself, even if there's no point of that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I want to bounce an idea off of you. Have you ever experienced this?
Yeah.
And it could be somebody that you haven't talked to in a while. Just, so.
Or you've never met, and you just kind of see, these people, they deal with something similar, so I'm just going to introduce myself, and that's it.
Absolutely.
So we kind of talked about this before you came on, I guess. Two things I want to talk about. The first thing is, I guess, what do you wish you saw? I guess, taking all your roles, whether it's Houma, Houston, Denver, Global, or whatever that looks like, I guess, what do you kind of wish that you saw more in our industry, or what do you wish our industry was doing more or more active too?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're going to see, especially coming out of COVID, you're going to see more emphasis on energy transition and a little bit more transparency on our carbon emissions.
Okay.
Right, and I think in the past we've done a poor job, as if you want to call it just oil and gas industry, of digging our heels in and really not trying to embrace some of the conversations that we have with respect to change,
or even engaging in those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's the thing, though. I mean, the whole digging the heels in and saying, "Nope, this is how it is. This is how it is." I mean, that's not going to facilitate, a productive conversation.
Yeah, no, I don't think it will. And you're going to hear more and more about the energy transition, and I think that our company, Baker Hughes, as well as many of the large super majors, have all kind of come out with carbon reduction targets that are kind of in line with the Paris Climate Accord. And, I think you'll see a lot more talk about energy companies instead of just oil and gas.
Company. You see that all the time right now. You see websites being completely restructured where it's a picture of a lake and hills and all that stuff, which is great. I mean, whether we're oil and gas or not, we still are environmentalists.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we never need to be honest with ourselves and be stewards of the environment. And I think that we can coexist. There are ways that we can coexist, and some of the technologies that people are talking about now are ones that really have already coexisted with us.
Exactly.
Geothermal and gas storage, and obviously the solar and wind and
but this isn't
nuclear.
This isn't new stuff, though. I mean, this whole energy transition. I mean, yeah, it seems like there's a lot more noise right now post COVID and all that stuff. But this is something that's been going on for decades.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like it's nothing new. So let's not stop having the same old conversations.
Yeah, I think that we just need to learn to to embrace it and understand that oil and gas isn't going anywhere in the near term, right? If you look at, I think it's Rystad data, they say peak oil demand globally will come 2028 to 2030.
Okay.
So, we've got 8 to 10 years before that's going to happen. And then even when that demand starts decreasing strictly for oil and gas, it's going to be another decade or two, we're talking 2050, before, we have to really think about other things.
So in the meantime, from I guess today until 2028 or 2035 or whatever what could we do as an industry right now to I guess be at that table and have those conversations? What does I guess energy transition mean for you, for personally, and also for the North American land business, and also internationally? What does that mean to you? Because you get a lot of good points about geothermal, raising the what do we call it? What did Drew Limbacher say? He called it the energy poverty levels. Increasing the energy poverty levels, and you had a different term for that. But what does the energy transition actually mean for you personally, and also us as an industry?
Yeah, well, I think part of the reluctance from an energy transition standpoint for our industry is that we feel that every country, whether they're an emerging nation or whatever, has the right to safe, affordable, efficient energy. And the key is that some of these alternative energies may not be as efficient or reliable as oil and gas, as fossil fuels. And so I think that there's the thought that for all of these countries, they should have every single opportunity to be able to, have running fresh water and electricity in their homes and only pay, equivalent to what we pay here in the U.S. And I know that there's a ton of other circumstances with respect to, politics and government and that sort of thing that can challenge that. But, some of these countries are just now developing infrastructure to be able to, whether it's refineries or chemical plants or power plants and that sort of thing.
And that's the thing, though. It's not that they're behind the times or anything like that. It's just the infrastructure with them and the I guess the access to affordable energy such as hydrocarbons has not been there.
Right. Yeah, they may be landlocked and not have oil reserves in their country at all or whatever it may be. But something has set them back an infrastructure.
So what does the energy transition look like to you, to the North American land market that you're seeing? I guess that you feel.
Yeah. So, if you look at like the California market is a lot of geothermal already. Right. So that's been going on for a while. Even we've got geothermal work in Hawaii, and I'd love to go.
I'd love
run
to
those jobs.
Start being a salesman in Hawaii. I'll do that in a heartbeat, man.
Yeah, and then you look at the Northeast, and they've big gas storage market there as well. So I think that you're just going to see a little bit more with respect to carbon capture.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be more talks about nuclear being a safe and reliable, and really I think that's what you're going to start seeing from North American land. I think you're going to see traditional oil and gas companies expand to some of these as well. I mean, from a drilling and completion standpoint, a lot of these really do go hand in hand. The geothermal is still not much different.
That's right.
You're dealing with steam and high temperatures, and so there's some changes that we'll need to make, but the overall technologies and drilling and completion methods are already existing, and they will need us to further these technologies.
So all this change that's going on, obviously all this noise, the people hearing about change here, the energy transition here, renewables. I guess what would you tell people out there right now listening to this that there is change coming, whether you like it or not, whether it's energy transition, personal career, but how could we be best equipped to handle this change? Whether number one, I would say acceptance. Accept that it's going to change, regardless whether you beat your chest or not. It's going to change, and it is changing.
Yeah, I mean, we're reluctant to change. I think it's just human nature, and industry in general is reluctant to change, and
we're a proud industry too.
We are, and really the point is that we need to be able to embrace that change and understand really what does it mean. It doesn't mean that oil and gas is going to be irrelevant anytime soon.
Right.
It just means that we need to better coexist and try to push those technology limits.
Yeah. So that's what I always say. It's like, this narrative that's been built up, the fossil fuels versus renewables, it's like there's no versus. We've coexisted, and it's all energy. We're not fighting each other. We're having the same conversation. So let's sit at the table and not take that us versus them approach. Let's discuss the change. Let's discuss, how to facilitate that, and what we can do as an industry to help that, because we are very smart people, very technical people. We whether it's information, data, we have the skill set, and we have the people. So let's not again dig our heels in. Let's sit at the table and have engaging conversations, because the change is there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's coming, and we just need to. It'd be better to get in front of it than to be a follower.
And I think that our industry has done a poor job of getting ahead of the story, or getting ahead of the narrative and telling our story, and kind of offering what we do as an industry that has impact communities and people's lives.
Yeah, and I don't think people understand really the breadth of our industry. So it's not just gasoline and jet fuel. It's there's all kinds of byproducts that we make that are everyday, and we need to do a better job of making sure everybody understands that. If oil and gas goes away, so does all this other stuff, not just...
There goes your jelly shoes and your sandals and all that stuff. So, yeah, I think that's it. I think it's just... I completely agree with you. It's having those conversations. It's also telling the story of us as an industry, and kind of what we do provide.
Yeah.
Yeah, not just on a local level, but on a global level.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Will, what else you got? What else you got for the listeners out there? Any other message? What are you excited about, I guess, moving forward? How about that?
Well, I mean, I'm excited in North American land to see 60 plus oil.
Yeah, that feels good. Now I just wish the activity would follow right now.
Yeah. So seeing things pick back up, I think that it's challenging to be in an industry where everything's negative. And I know for our organization, anytime you go through restructuring and activity suppressed, it's hard to find the positives in things, and so I think that we're just now being able to do that, and looking forward to some more fun days, going to work and it being fun now.
Yeah, I went to the AD golf tournament. I think it was last Monday, and that was the first time I really felt like it was like everyone was back goofing off, laughing. There wasn't COVID talk. There wasn't. Yeah, there was COVID, but it wasn't like doom and gloom. It seemed like the atmosphere and the energy was a little more positive and optimistic, which was great, I thought.
Yeah, we definitely need that. I think that, just as human beings, you can only take so much of the negativity and the challenge, and so it's so we're looking forward to a good 2021 with activity improvement and more of these events. I
love these events. That's the one thing about our industry I love. It's the people, it's the stories, it's the relationships that are built, and it's so difficult to have done that in the past year. And I'm so glad to kind of see you're starting to see these barbecues, these charity events, or they're starting being more well attended right now, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, I think they even said opening day in Arlington for baseball.
Oh yeah,
was at like 100% capacity, first 100% capacity.
And you got the rest of it. Go with it. Why not? If you want to go, let him go. That's my opinion. Well, everyone, again, this is Will Cauley. Again, you can connect with him on LinkedIn and just kind of ping him, tag up with a cup of coffee, pick his ear about mentoring, leadership, sales, or kind of how to embrace change. I appreciate you coming on. I'm glad we're able to finally do this. I would love to get into stories next time about traveling different places, kind of what you've seen and kind of the differences and all that stuff. But that's got to wait. That's got to wait for our audience until next time, round 2.
Next time.
But Will, again, I appreciate it. And again, everyone, this is Will Cauley, the Regional Service Delivery Technical Manager at Baker Hughes, or as we like to say, the Operations Engineer Manager, NALCWI. Again, everyone, thank you for tuning in to Round the Rotary. And Will, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And we'll be in touch, buddy.
Thanks for having me, JP.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you in a little bit.